Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. My name is Sue Nelson, and I'm a member of the Special Programs Committee. Today, we're here to learn from Nancy Chen about women's participation in work and how they impact the larger economy. Nancy Chen leads the Midwest Regional Office of the Women's Bureau of the U.S. Department of Labor, the only federal agency designated by Congress to address issues and concerns of working women. She's in Cleveland today at the request of Hard-Hatted Women, who hosted a symposium this morning on how to encourage women to participate in green jobs and the education and training to prepare for those jobs. During that time and during that symposium, we have formed an opinion of Ms. Chen that she is very knowledgeable about how the Department of Labor functions, what the Obama administration's priorities are and going to be, and how they'll carry them out, and how she is very interested in green jobs, applying her knowledge of policy making to getting women into those green jobs, many of which are being funded by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, some of which we all just lump together and call the stimulus package. A little bit about Ms. Chen. In 1997, she became the first Asian American regional administrator in the history of the Women's Bureau. She directs and develops the regional programs to help women achieve better jobs, better earnings, and better living in the states of Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Under Nancy's leadership, the regional office has been a strong voice championing issues such as equal pay, financial security, flexible workplace, and non-traditional employment, especially in math, science, and technology careers for women, through outreach and education in her 6 states. Committed to empowering and advancing women, Nancy is founder and past president of the National Women's Political Caucus of Greater Chicago from 1992 to 1994. In 1997, the Secretary of Defense appointed her to serve as a member of the Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services. She served as a member of the Illinois Advisory Committee to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and currently Nancy is a member of the Board of Counselors for the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute in Illinois. Ms. Chen is a native of China. She came to the United States as a student in the 60s. You don't look that old. Since then, she's been a trailblazer for others in the Chinese American community. She was a founding member of the Organization of Chinese Americans Chicago chapter and was a board member of the Asian American Institute. In 2006, Nancy was a co-chair of the Asian American Steering Committee for Tammy Duckworth's congressional campaign in the Illinois 6th Congressional District. And she served as a co-chair of the AAPI National Leadership Council for Barack Obama's presidential campaign from May of 2007 to November of 2008, at which point that wasn't needed anymore. Please give a City Club welcome to Nancy Chen.
Thank you, Sue, and for such a kind introduction. But you just get me out of my political stripe now. As a federal employee, I'm not supposed to show any political leaning, but now you know. Well, I'm only 5 feet tall, and but stand before you in a place where past presidents, national leaders, and international leaders have spoken before me in the past 97 years, I feel as tall as LeBron James and reaching as tall as Yao Ming. As an immigrant who came to this country, as Sue mentioned, that I came in the late 60s to this, so it's almost over 40 years ago. With just a suitcase and a dream of opportunities, I'm both honored and very humbled to speak before this august institution. And I wish my parents were still alive today to hear this. You see, my brother followed me to the United States 3 years after me, and he went to the Cleveland State University. And then he went on to receive his PhD from Ohio State University. So my parents learned about the state of Ohio from us. Last Wednesday was Women's Equality Day, and this is an important historic occasion to commemorate the passage of 19th Amendment, which gave women full voting rights in 1920. But you may not know that 1920 is also the year that the Women's Bureau was created. And I'm here today to talk about how far women have come and how much more opportunity there still is. You may remember learning about the plight of 146 young immigrant women and girls who died in the tragic Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire of 1911. They were trapped inside with the doors shut and burned to death or jump out of the windows to death. And this tragedy was a turning point in the U.S. labor history. In response to the outcry from the public, Congress created the Women's Bureau to monitor the working conditions and to advance women's opportunities in the workplace. The mission of the Women's Bureau was, and still is, to improve working conditions for women and to advance women's employment opportunities. I'm very proud to say that we are the only federal agency with a mission to address the issues and concerns for working women. The Women's Bureau history reflects the history of women in the workforce in this country. One of our early achievements was the inclusion of women under the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, which for the first time set minimum wage and maximum working hours for all workers. Well, today we take for granted about this, and it is almost incomprehensible to think that women in those days had to fight to be covered under this law. During World War II, the Bureau worked to create more skills training, wider job opportunities, better pay, and better working conditions for what was then called the new female workforce. Remember Rosie the Riveter? Well, Rosie and other women marched out of the kitchen and to fill the jobs left by men who went to war to defend our country. Rosie and all these women proved to themselves and the country that they could do a man's job, and we all know that they did it well. After the war, many women went back to the kitchen, but many stayed in the workforce. However, despite the abilities women had proven during the war, employers still openly advertise jobs with separate listings for men and women with separate pay scales for doing exact the same jobs. Some jobs were posted as male only. Now, for those young women and men here today, I don't think that you knew about this. Women earn only half of every dollar earned by men. Esther Peterson, then the director of the Women's Bureau, traveled throughout the United States in the early 60s, highlighting this inequality, sharing real stories of women workers who worked side by side with men, but receiving less for the same work. In 1963, President John F. Kennedy signed the historic legislation to guarantee equal pay for women and men who held the same job. Equal Pay Act not only changed the legal landscape for working women, but laid the foundation for women's economic empowerment. Now fast forward to the 21st century. Today, women are almost 47% of our nation's workforce, and 60% of all women are working. 59% of this country's labor force growth came from women in the last 10 years. Now, for those of you who have read the USA Today,